911, what is your emergency? This is 911 emergency, what are you reporting for?
Welcome back, everybody, to We Speak Dispatch. We have our usual panelists, and John and Doug, they're joining us. And this is part 2 of the question and answer with law enforcement, as we have a law enforcement official, Adam, with us from Southern California. He introduced himself last time, and the questions got so much discussion that we're just going to hop right back into it. And we're going to start with kind of a training one. And I know Doug is big in training and everything else. So we're going to throw it over to him. Doug, besides doing ride-alongs, we talked on a past episode about ride-alongs, but besides doing ride-alongs, what are some other ways that dispatch can start to get more involved in training, whether it be with law enforcement, fire, EMS, or anybody? What can we start to do to start bridging the gap?
Well, you know, besides ride-alongs, which I think are critically important if you use them correctly, but we would bring the officers in for our training days at the comm center and have them show how to throw a spike strip, how to do a felony stop. We did a felony stop in our parking lot with 2 of our dispatchers in the car to show everybody how long it actually takes to do a felony stop and get people out of the car and lay them down and do all this stuff. So our dispatchers had a better idea of, okay, that's what they're doing. They're taking this much time to do that stuff. So I think involving the training of our dispatchers with our officers in there, not just showing them a video, but actually having them come see it, was very, very useful for all of our folks. Especially we had them, our last training day, we had them fire a taser. One of our officers is a taser instructor, and he let everybody fire this thing. And so many people were like, I didn't know it was so loud, and I didn't know the 2 prongs have to actually hit. And it's like, we just didn't know that stuff because we don't do it. So I think that's just critically important to work together.
John, what do you recommend from your agency?
Right now, it's pretty much ride-alongs. Well, not right now, but that's the majority of how we bridge the gap is through ride-alongs across all shifts. And we even have the folks who who work permanent nights ride along at night so that they see the area just like the officers do. Or if they do that, sometimes they'll roll back their hours and go with an evening shift officer so that they could see the lay of the land geography-wise, but also see how it changes in darkness.
Yeah.
But I do like everything Doug said, so I'm going to even jot that down.
Adam, what about at your agency? How did dispatchers get more involved at your agency?
Yeah, sometimes along with ride-alongs, but they also are role players when we do high-risk stop training. They'll be the suspects in the car.
Wow.
And they'll be the ones that we call out of the car and walk backwards, turn around, do the whole bit. So they can get both sides of the situation, whatever the training is.
That's awesome. And we also kind of do somewhat similar. I'll use a fire example in case we have some dispatchers watching that are fires. We sent them over and got a tour of our main central station. And then we, through the city, had to accomplish fire extinguisher training. So the fire department did that for us. And we were actually able to use the fire extinguisher. They had this little firebox thing outside in the parking lot. And 2 dispatchers at a time got to go up, pull the pin on the fire extinguisher, pointed at it, put it out, and then they would relight it for other dispatchers to do it. And rather than watching a video or here's a fire extinguisher,
Right,
and everything else, it was one of the better training days that we ever had.
Yeah.
We're gonna throw this one back to Adam because I think he said that we'll just leave it at this. There's an auto accident barely in the city limits, and a deputy rolls up on scene first, or the state patrol. In your agency, does the deputy take the report, or the state, whoever gets there, or do they get on scene and then call for the city to respond to the accident?
Yeah, if it's we designate whether it's in our city or whether it's in the county, and then if it's they're called, and then we call them and say, hey, this is yours. If it's something close, there've been times before where we clearly have more resources because the neighboring agencies, they don't have that many people. So sometimes we'll just say, yeah, we'll take it for you. Now, if something really, if it's, a fatal or above, then no, sorry, that's yours. You guys got to take it. And but you know,
That's a big one. It's yours.
Yeah.
We'll take the small ones.
Yeah.
And John, what about at your agency?
Who?
What about you, John, at your agency?
Yeah, it's all jurisdictional based. So if it's in the county, it's ours. If it's in one of the townships or a city, we have to notify those respective law enforcement agencies. If, like you mentioned, state police, Joe, if it's on like an interstate, and again, it depends how agencies are set up. The state police patrol the interstates in my area. The county and the township police patrol like the major roadways and off the interstate. So if it's on the interstate, we will call the state police, and if the state police roll up on an incident off the interstate, they will call us in most circumstances.
And Doug, what about you? Who are you all getting a hold of?
Well, because I worked for the state, that we had a situation to where I'm convinced that some officers pushed cars a little bit over the line. So it'd be like, that's city now, let them do it. But I'm just kidding. But we did have issues where, because we handled the entire state, we did have agencies that don't have a lot of officers, like Adam said. And we would have to just stay and help them do whatever they got to do, because they just don't have enough people. I mean, they're out of resources. They don't really know how to handle big events, fatals and stuff like that. So our units would happen. And in fact, our policy was, and I had to remind our officers many times of this policy, they didn't think it was, but our policy was, if the locals don't respond, we go. If it's in the city, we still go. Because our thing was, hey, we're the state. We can go. And if we can go anywhere in the state we want, but it's like, if a local says, well, we're not going to go, whatever, we go and we handle these things. And it was just, it was sometimes people didn't want to respond to stuff, and it was like, we're going. So we'll just go handle it ourselves, deal with it.
And that's the complete opposite with us, because we had more resources than state police. There are fewer troopers on duty in an area that they cover than there are county officers that they could get to something much quicker.
I agree. We were a very unusual agency because we had so many officers out. I mean, it was just unbelievable, the amount of people we had on the field.
Yeah. So very interesting. I'm going to throw this one to Adam because it's about car chases. Car chase. All right. Should the dispatcher repeat all of the information that's being said like a parrot?
Oh, this is good.
Or should they listen most of the time and only clarify things necessary to keep the radio open?
Oh.
I think it's I think it can change. I think initially when somebody a unit advises, hey, I'm in pursuit, that they should have about the first 30 seconds, 45 seconds of clear air, so that they could put out critical information right away with nobody else stepping on them. And then after that, directional changes or updates to the speed and the direction, then dispatch should parrot those back and make sure other officers are aware of that stuff.
But if it's not directional or speed related, maybe they're just asking something else, another question, or stating something like, we'll say they ran a red light, log that to the CAD. Did you want dispatch repeating that back? Ran red light?
Not necessarily. They can put that down in the log, but having to repeat it back, I don't think that's critical.
Okay. John, how do you do it at your agency?
I think it's a mixture of both. Some repeat, some don't. It's just how you are trained kind of thing. But I think a lot of it also depends on the agency's radio system, that some are really good and it's not either simplex or VHF or skips and that kind of thing. If it's like a trunk system has a lot of repeaters out there, and each agency should know their own. My position is, if you have a good radio system, give the radio to the officer who's in pursuit, that's clear, or the patrol supervisor who's in charge of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Doug, what about your agency? Did you guys parrot?
Well, kind of. It like John said, and Adam said too, it depends on the radio system. Some of our more metropolis areas had simulcast. Everybody could hear everybody, and that was a great thing. Whereas some of the areas didn't have that, and we had to repeat everything because the other units trying to catch up had no idea what that unit was saying. So we had to say what was going on. So our agency kind of put a lot of responsibility on dispatchers, because our deal was, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, that if we're chasing somebody, you're out. No other agency can be involved. And our dispatchers would tell the other agency, you need to stay out of it. We're in it, you're out.
Wow.
And if they don't get out, we're done. We will not stay in it. So, it's just, I thought it put a lot on our dispatchers to tell another agency, if you want us to take it, you get out of it. And it's that simple. You can't trail, you can't just stay behind, you're gone. It's like, we just can't have that happen. So it was kind of a difficult situation.
We're about the same. We parrot some stuff back. We don't parrot all, because a lot of people can hear our transmissions, and our radio system is pretty robust and it works really well. So we're very fortunate in that regards. And the one thing I will say is we did make a change a few years ago to where we no longer make them switch channels. The instant they're in a chase, we routine traffic to a different channel so the officer can keep eyes in front of them and just worry about keying up.
Exactly.
That channel that they start the chase on open for them, and then their backup units. And the one thing that's difficult from our end is getting the specific number of backup units that are allowed by policy, because a lot of times several people are close or several people want to go.
Yeah.
One or the other. That first minute of the car chase can sometimes be a big challenge because of that. I'm going to throw this one back to Doug. List a reason why a dispatcher may make a responder repeat their traffic besides being on a 911 call.
Well, if they're not clear, I know some of our officers that were newer had the microphones that are up here on their lapel, and they were told that because they're on the freeway, they would have to kind of yell into the mic, and it would overmodulate to the point where you're like, I'm not sure what this guy's screaming about, but something bad's going on. And it's like, so we'd have to tell them, like, you don't have to scream. It's real sensitive. You can just key down and say, here's what's going on, and that's it. So that's one of the biggest reasons I could think of.
Yeah. John, what about you?
I have to turn around and put my cards down from the card game.
Oh my God, jeez.
I'm kidding. But,
wow.
But he
just made it real right here.
Yeah, when we're doing it, or we're like reading a book or something, it's like so intense. You're like, was that me? Was that my channel? Someone across my headset? Let me play it back, kind of thing. But I think a lot of it honestly goes back to the system that's used and what's clear and what's not.
Yeah.
Saying the transmission is clear, Adam, flip the script. What's one reason you would make dispatch repeat that we may not be aware of?
Well, this kind of goes back to ride-alongs and training with dispatchers, because in the city that I worked, some streets were 5 digits and other streets were 4 digits. The north-south streets were 5, east-west were 4. And if an officer comes on and gives a 4-digit for a north-south street, some of the sharp dispatchers say, hey, confirm your 20, because that's not right. So that's another advantage of getting the dispatchers out into the field and learning which streets are 5 digits, which are 4, so that they know, hey, if this officer gives this address, then they'd say, no, that's not right. And then either have somebody check on him or, see if he can clarify his location.
Yeah.
What about if, like, you're talking to a person you've pulled over or something, and we don't know you're actually talking to somebody and you missed the trap? Is that another reason we'd have to repeat stuff, because you're like listening to the person talking? Do you do that?
Yeah, it can be. It does take some time to still be able to hold a conversation with somebody and still hear dispatch in your ear. Sure. And sometimes be able to just quickly say 10-4, I got that, or, just acknowledge it in another way. But it does take a little time, especially if the intensity of the conversation is you're concentrating a lot, but it is a learned thing, talking to somebody, but then listening to dispatch in your ear at the same time and understanding both.
Yeah.
So they have multitasking too.
That's it.
Believe it or not.
It's awesome to have that conversation. The last question I'm going to ask of everybody is, do you include the dispatchers in any after action reviews or peer support or critical incident debriefing at your agency? And we'll kick that to Adam first. Adam, do you include the dispatchers in any sort of after action review, critical incident debriefing, or peer support?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've done that for probably 3 or 4 years now, where everybody comes in, all dispatch, all the officers that were working, and we'll have a full briefing room, and everybody will have an opportunity to go around the room and say, okay, what happened in your situation? And it's been very, very useful because, there might be that one piece of the puzzle that somebody doesn't understand because of where they were. And when somebody else explains it, they're like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right.
That's why. And the other thing too is, just the normal frustrations of being a dispatcher, being a cop, and something that's tragic that happens, and voicing the, I wish I could have done more, and encouraging one another. Hey, you did the best you could. There's nobody that could have done better than what you did. And encouraging one another is really useful to, keeping people in the game and to getting them through critical situations like that.
Absolutely. John, what about at your agency?
Yeah, fortunately, the police department does include the dispatch center in post-incident activities. Particularly now we have a in-house peer support team that liaises quite heavily with the law enforcement side of the house. So we've always had a strong kinship, but it's even stronger, I believe, now with that component. But yeah, we're invited. Unfortunately, they don't happen as timely as close to when the actual incident occurred. But when they do happen for major large scale events, the law enforcement agency will reach out to us, which is great.
That's nice.
What do you have at your agency?
We didn't do a lot of this until maybe 8 or 9 years ago. It was basically the officers did their thing, and dispatch was just like, we're not even going to include them. And it did suck. I'm telling you right now. But when we started doing that inclusion of bring the dispatchers who were involved in this thing into this thing, you could see the difference it made in people. I mean, they come back like having a complete new understanding. Like Adam said, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that's what was going on, or that what's happened, or whatever. So I'm such a big fan of it now. I wish I could have done it 20 years ago when we had these events. So yeah.
Yeah, it puts things in perspective.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We're taking a lot of the same steps at our agency and including the dispatchers more, and I hope it continues to. We've had both examples of where we haven't and where we have, and the benefits and the disadvantages of not including us and everything else. So that's been our part 2 episode of the question and answer with law enforcement. Adam, thank you for joining us. And I'm going to sum up this episode by saying, learn together, grow together, train together. And the more that we start to do together, the more understanding we're going to get from each other, and the better we're going to become at both sides of the radio. And ultimately, we use both sides of the radio to communicate on each and every shift. So include your dispatchers include your law enforcement and fire, or whoever it is that you dispatch for. And if you want to be a guest on We Speak Dispatch, make sure you send us an email at wespeakdispatch@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter at We Speak Dispatch. Imagine that. And we're also on several podcast platforms, but I listed them all off on episode 1. So go back and watch that. But it's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, the major ones. And we hope to see you on a future episode of We Speak Dispatch. Adam, thanks for joining us. Doug and John.
Thank you, guys. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. This is great.
Hey, this is Jill, and you've been listening to another great episode of We Speak Dispatch, proudly sponsored by our friends at Zybex.
911, what's your emergency? 911 emergency, what are you reporting for?